We're going to move on from the head, and then we're going to move on to the vertebral column. Now the vertebral column is going to pass from just behind the pole, right along the neck, right along the chine, right along the loin, right along the rump, and come right down here to the end of the tail. So from behind the pole to the tip of the tail, we have got a series of bones which are vertebrae. Now the vertebrae all have a few characters. They all have things that stick out the side. They all have things that stick up the top. Those things that stick out the side and stick up the top are going to once again be surface area for muscles to attach to, and we'll see the significance of that as we pass from the pole back to the end of the tail. All of these vertebrae are going to have, except for the vertebrae at the end of the tail, are going to have a solid piece of bone at the bottom. And all vertebrae are going to have a hole through the center, because that's where the spinal cord runs. And all vertebrae are going to have little holes out the side which allow nerves to go down, which makes the heart work, the lungs work, it makes the muscles work, it makes everything work. Okay, so the spinal cord is vital. Damage your spinal cord, you're paralyzed. So it's very important that we have this vertebral column which gives us a lot of protection for vital and delicate organs. And you'll be surprised how delicate that spinal cord is, very easily damaged, and the only reason there's not more people around in wheelchairs is because these vertebrae and the vertebral column is just such an amazing thing with strength and resilience to prevent that damage from occurring. Now you'll find that we've got 5 areas. We've got the neck, chine, loin, rump, and tail regions. And in those areas, these vertebrae have very different shapes. So let's start with the vertebrae of the neck. You'll find that every cow has 7 vertebrae in the neck region. Now when I come behind the pole here, I can feel there's bone which is quite wide behind that skull, because the first vertebrae has that shape. And it's got that particular shape so that it can attach onto the back of the skull in a nice way. And it means that there's very little area which is exposed. But you know, if you want to kill a rabbit, you give it a rabbit kill. If you were to hit right at that spot, that's the spot where the spinal cord is a little bit at risk out of the whole vertebral column. And you can see how it just doesn't cover over completely. Okay, but this does fit onto there nicely, and because of the shape of that vertebrae, we've got this first vertebrae sticking out the side here. The next vertebrae looks like this. It's quite a different shape, but you can see that it all fits together nicely. And once again, you can see how it's not as wide and it's getting shorter. And as we pass down the neck, this is the main part, we have got all the other 5 vertebrae look exactly like this. We've got the strong bone at the base, space for the spinal cord, and very little processes sticking up or out. So we don't have much muscle in the neck region. Okay, the other thing to realize, if you can just turn the head slightly that way, these vertebrae run from the skull and they run down in this line here. Most people expect the vertebrae to be running along the top of the neck, but that's not true. The vertebrae, and you can see this line, and the vertebrae run down in that region. So in this area here, we've got no bone at all. What we do have though, you can straighten it up now, it should be comfortable. We've got a very strong ligament which runs from the pole, and you can feel it in here. It's solid, and it's a strong ligament which runs to the wither region. And then it's a big round structure like so, and you can feel it running down there. And then from that round part, we've got a sheet of tissue which runs down and attaches onto the vertebrae, which are running down in this line. Now, that structure is particularly important because it's very elastic. When a cow is just standing, all that tissue is relaxed. But if she puts her head down to graze, or she puts her head down to drink, or she turns to look around and her head is lowered a little bit, that elastic tissue has to expand, and then when she's done, when she's finished eating and she comes back in the normal position, she stands like so. And that's because you've got this big band of elastic tissue here. But that's not important as far as a confirmation, but it's just an interesting point that I do want to mention. We've got these 7 vertebrae which run from the back of the skull down to about this region here. That's about where the neck ends. There's not much muscle there. A lot of times we have to give injections into the neck. Never ever give an injection in the neck in that region, because if you've got a 1.5-inch needle, you are going to be going bang into that ligament, which helps to sort of lower and lift the head. And if that's sore, that's going to interfere with the grazing, etc. Down in this region here, you've got a little more muscle. If you want to give an intramuscular injection in the neck, always give it in that region low down. Don't ever inject high, because you are going to be damaging that important structure for lifting and lowering the neck. Okay, as we said, these vertebrae in the neck region don't have processes sticking out much, That's why when you go to have a roast of beef, you never have roast of neck, because there's not much muscle there, because there's not much bone there for the muscles to attach to. Okay, so because in all cows there are only 7 vertebrae, those cows which have that long neck like this cow has will have individually long vertebrae. Okay, now if they've got long vertebrae in the neck region, it's not surprising they're going to have a little longer vertebrae in every other region of the body. Okay, so this cow here with this long neck, and one of the things which amazes me and I admire just so much about this cow is the length of this cow. She is extremely long. Got the long neck because she's got those long vertebrae, and you can see how if she's got long neck vertebrae, she's got long chest vertebrae to give her a long chest. She's got a long loin because of the length of the vertebrae there. She's got a long rump because of the length of the vertebrae there. It all tends to correlate, and that's important to remember. But when we come to the next region, which is the chest region or chine region, we find that these vertebrae appear quite different. So we've got rid of some of the bullshit stuff now. Now we get to the real things which determine the shape of the cow. When we come to the chest region, the vertebrae look like this. They've got this huge process which sticks up from the vertebrae. And because you've got a bone of this shape and this dimensions in this region, you can see, and you can see how that's so rough and severed. There would have been a little bit of cartilage and stuff on that. So it's in reality, it's even a little longer. But you can sort of see these indentations here, and those indentations that you can see are the tops of these vertebrae. All right?